Welcome to episode 2 of Practice Makes Perfect. This guest is Big Game James, formerly known as Red Venom. How's it going today, James?
Pretty good, man.
So,
Glad to be here.
how's it been in Cali as far as
Oh,
like playing the game during Corona?
well, it's been a lot less active. I don't play online, so I would say the availability of like offline sessions. I mean, for a while, nobody played for almost, I would say, 2 months
Right.
at all. And then, everybody gets a little stir crazy. So I started having just very small, like one or two people over to my place, maybe once a week at most. And after a while the boiler started having sessions pretty infrequently compared to before.
Right.
So
How often was
I
it
mean,
before?
oh
Like
geez,
twice a week,
maybe
3 times a week?
3 or 4 days a week.
Jesus. I wish that my scene was as, you know,
I mean,
busy as that.
a heavy week, they may play almost every day.
Really? That's
Um,
that's impressive.
but the sessions are pretty varying over there. I mean, you could just have a night where there's only 3 or 4 people, and
I mean,
or you could,
the amount of people
or
doesn't matter as long as the match quality is there, right?
uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess I'm inferring that like sometimes like the match quality is varying as well. So
Gotcha. I mean, it's
it's a
like that for
little,
every scene, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so we've talked before, not on here. And you started playing Third Strike when it was sort of big at Denjin, right? Back around when Street Fighter 4 came out, so like 2009-ish.
yeah. 2010 is when I moved to Simi Valley and started playing there.
So you've been
So
playing Third Strike for basically a decade.
yeah, I guess it's been a decade now.
So when you started playing, did you start playing with Ken? Because I know Ken's your main now.
No, I was well, actually, it's I didn't really have a main at that time yet. Uh,
Okay.
and now that I think about it, I'm sorry. I actually moved there in March of 2011.
Oh,
Uh,
well,
so my bad. Anyway,
it's okay.
so yeah, I had been playing the game on GGPO before moving to that area.
Okay.
I was like a really early adopter of GGPO, all the way back to the beta when it was only Alpha 2 playable.
So like 2008.
I believe that's yeah.
Okay.
Like I bought a USB like 360 pad just so I could play on there. Even though I'm not like a pad, I can't really play fighting games with a pad, but sticks weren't common then.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I had been like I would play a lot of Ryu to be honest, because just Street Fighter, playing other games.
I mean, he's a very fundamental base character.
Yeah, and if you don't play Third Strike very well, like it's pretty easy to just like low forward EX Fireball a lot, you know.
Right.
So
I mean, if I
um,
remember right, Valle plays for you, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, I don't think he touches the game that much. I don't know how much he played it back in the day, but you know, it seems to be one of those characters that old school Street Fighter players tend to play. Either him or Ken or Chun, like very footsie heavy characters.
yeah. I think there's diminishing returns to playing Ryu that way, but when you just like touch the game and you already have some Street Fighter skills, I guess,
Legacy
um,
skill.
legacy skill, you can do some stuff and make people annoyed that you like stand far away from them and whiff punish or whatever.
Right.
But I would consider myself pretty casual with the game. Like I didn't I didn't put a lot of thought into my playing. It was just by feel and just for fun because the game's really satisfying to play. I've always really liked how throws work in the game, for instance.
Right. So what
Um,
differentiates Third Strike throws from like Street Fighter 4 throws?
um, I guess it just ties into everything else in the game, like the frame data in general. I mean,
Right.
first of all, Street Fighter 4 throws you can tech for I believe 12 frames standing. Like if you like actually grab.
That's a
So
forever amount of time in fighting games.
exactly. So crouch teching in Street Fighter 4 is, I believe, identical to third strike, seven frames, I believe. Um, so throws are just not that great in Street Fighter 4. I mean, like they're just, they're like a there's something you throw in once you already have the threat of like
Your normal mix-up game.
your frame traps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Um.
when did you start playing Oro?
Okay. So yeah, to get to that, it's so I would go to Denjin, and obviously we're playing with quarters,
Right.
and
That's
I'd
alien
play a
to
lot
so
of
many players.
yeah, I would play a lot of Ryu because I just I don't know. You don't want to just like lose playing something you don't know very well, or I'm that type of person, I guess. I don't
Right.
like to mess around with stuff that I'm not already putting some practice into.
Right.
Um, but I would go home and play during the week. Pretty much Denjin was only like crowded enough for me to want to go on the weekends.
Okay.
And I only lived a few blocks away, but it was like I mostly played Street Fighter 4 at the time, so there would only be 4 players on like Friday and Saturday,
Right.
to give some context. And there were always a lot of third strike players, so slowly played the game more and more, go home, practice on GGPO during the week. And I noticed that whenever I was beating someone like, a lot, I would just start playing Oro, like switch over as just that like mess around character.
Right.
And learned a few things. I was always a fan of the Oro players. I mean, I just had like, I think the character is cool. And
I mean, the West Coast had a couple good Oro players, if I remember right. You had Hungby and you had who's the other one?
well, there's Bebop, but I don't think he was anywhere close to Hungby. Hungby was like a legit like top player still.
Thongboy Bebop,
Uh,
Mr. OG content creator.
no, I think they're different. It was just Bebop.
Oh,
He's like famous for that one video where he's just screaming at the other dude across the cab
I don't
and
think I've
saying
seen
like,
that.
"I'll link it to you when we're done." But yeah, so I just started messing with them, and pretty quickly after a couple, I would say within like 6 months, it just became like I'm using Oral all the time, and like started doing pretty well with him. Like I'm at the time I'm playing against basically the best players in SoCal. Pyro Lee's there like probably 5 nights a week, driving all the way to Denjin, like an hour for him, I believe.
Jesus, that's some dedication.
Yeah, and 5 Star would be there, um, and all the other guys who were like tournament players at that time.
So
So
basically, Family Fun Arcade version 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm using Oral like most of the time, and just I don't know. I figured out some things about the game and just became that I liked the character and I could do all the combos. So I mean I
So
was like a
what?
SA3 Oral player too, so it's like
Right. I mean,
a
that
little
was
little
also
different than nowadays.
before there was really optimized like routes for unblockables and stuff, right? Like as far as
I would say
you
so.
know, information being readily available at least.
Oh yeah, the only unblockables that I knew how to do were the easy ones, which are against Dudley and Alex.
Right. So what made you
You know.
drop Oro?
Well, I kept playing him for a long time, but um, I guess like the thing is like I play Shotos in other games.
Right.
Like if I were to play in like Alpha 2 or ST, I play Shotos in those games. Street Fighter 4, I played Viper, but my secondary was Ryu. So again, playing a lot of Ryu and Evil Ryu
Right.
in that game. And I mean, honestly, like I would play Ken like here and there also. And I just felt like um, I felt comfortable with like the Shotos and Third Strike always. It's just a matter of like not being good enough at the game. Oro like allowed me to play it a different way. Like I could play more like the way like a Urian player thinks about the game, where it's like I could be down against a strong player and just go like all I need is like this one hit, one parry somewhere, one jump,
Right.
just give me an opening and I will convert this into 50% or whatever.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things
Um,
that's very underappreciated about SA3 Oro, because like most of the Oro players nowadays are all like, I want to do unblockables, similar to how, the Urium players approach things.
yep,
So, you know, the strongest Oro players all play both, right? So,
I think so. Yeah, I
you know,
think three is or SA3 is totally viable. Like it's probably preferable against a few characters.
it's preferable
Um,
versus twins, I know that for sure.
yeah, I think Goki for sure is the better choice personally. So, but I kept playing Oro, right? So keep in mind, Denjin closed down.
Yeah.
I moved out of Simi Valley into the greater LA area, and FFA became the new spot. But I would say um, the amount of like nights people were playing became less frequent,
Right.
and my friend Rennick moved out of LA at this time as well. So I kind of like didn't play the game as much. I would say I went from playing a couple days a week to like once every week or maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
Um, and then FFA shut down after about a year. Um, and then we migrated to Japan Arcade, and then that shut down. Then Super Arcade, which was really all the way across the entirety of LA. But Super Arcade was having tournaments consistently, so now we're jumping a few years, and I haven't been playing like a ton, but just
Right.
consistently I've been playing, but not a lot, and no practicing because there is just no reason.
Right.
So now Super Arcade's having tournaments, but a lot of those old school guys aren't showing up. Still, they would have numbers. I mean, you'd have 30 players or so. And I think I got top three in like almost every Super Arcade tournament over the course of like 2 years.
That's pretty good.
Um, yeah, I mean, I won one of them. I lost like, I got second like at least two or three times. Mike Watson would usually uh, beat me. And that kind of that kind of is where like the Ken thing comes in. It's like I have one memorable tournament where I put Mike in losers really easily. It's on YouTube, and I like 3-0 him. I think
Okay.
put him in losers Oro versus Ken, and then he like works his way back to grand finals, and he picks Seienbu Yang,
I've
and
always
he
known
just
Watson as a Chun player, so that's a little surprising to me.
oh really, he's a Ken player. His chun, if you ever saw it, was just like here and there. It's definitely not a chun player. So his Ken's good. I mean, his Ken is very solid. I mean, I won't bother explaining it, but
All right.
his Ken's good. Um, and he picked Yang, and just like, oh, keep in mind, he's a really his like one of his best friends is Hungbi.
Okay.
So back in the day, I mean, now like we're already up to around like 2014,
Yep.
something like that. So back in the day, like in the Evo years where Third Strike was at Evo, uh, Watson and Hungbi would be playing at their places like all the time. So he knows Oro like really well, the Oro matchup.
Right.
So he picks Yang, and I've just never really played like a good Yang before, and he just like stomps me, um, just mauled. Can't come up with any answers on the fly, and I guess that's the thing is like in my time playing Oro, I've gotten second place or third place so many times versus losing to Pyro, losing to Five Star, losing to Watson, and it's like it might be like where I belong, but at the same time, I kind of blamed the character
Okay.
because you just come up against like too much stuff that it's hard to get around without like extreme game knowledge.
That's the way that it is for a lot of characters, right? Like, how many players would you actually realistically suggest learning Q as their first character? Like, to me, there's a lot of characters in this game that you really need a vast amount of game knowledge, which either you have to be okay with just taking your lickings forever until you
Yeah.
learn everything, or you have to play a character that teaches you everything at a more fast pace, right?
Yeah.
And even when you're playing, everyone sort of tells players to play Ken, right, as their first character.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't really agree personally.
Me either.
Um, but, Ken has every tool in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he does everything well. So I understand why people say that. But, there are certain things between characters that, don't really translate very well. So, like, if someone's goal is to play Hugo or Q or whatever, learning Ken may or may not help their overall, like, goal of being good with that other character.
Right.
So, depending on, like, what the type of player, like, or what the player wants out of the game and, like, what they're attracted to and all that sort of things, like, really depends on how you have to approach picking a new character or picking your first character.
Yeah.
Um, so like, was that an issue for you when you started with Oro in general? Like that you just had to overcome all of that game knowledge? Like you said, you kind of wanted to move to Ken because there was less that you needed to like focus on, I guess. Like matchups are a
Well,
lot more important as Oro. You can get
yeah.
away with a lot more with higher tier characters for sure.
I had a theory that my own game skills would work better for Ken.
Okay.
And while he is, a higher tier character, I just felt like I wasn't doing Oro justice outside of just, um, I don't
Those
know.
big opportunity plays.
I played Oro like super conservatively, just poking, and only when I had like meter and the right position did I decide to start taking like risks to like get big returns,
So
which
you
is
you felt like the risk reward for your decisions wasn't quite what you wanted, or you were just completely risk averse in general. So like when you're playing a character that requires risk, like Hugo or
right.
Oro or whatever, obviously it's matchup dependent. But baseline, there's a lot of characters that require you to take risks to really do well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where that whole game knowledge thing comes in, where if you don't know enough, you're taking just random risks as opposed to calculated risks.
Yeah, like I guess my analysis is like Oro to play him at super the highest level, you have to be pretty tricky over playing him super stable.
Right.
And I mean, it's kind of like untrue because if I look at Kuroda's Oro, it's very stable, I would say.
But if you
But
look
at
at
the
a
same time,
majority of the other Oros, like a lot of them
yeah,
are very slippery.
yeah, they're slippery. They're just looking for one big move, and and they're willing to take like calculated risks to get it. And I'm not really like super comfortable playing that way.
Right.
And I think for American style tournaments, it also is a factor.
Oro's definitely a better one game character.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I felt like if I were to take the game seriously, I would play Ken. And then I had a couple years where I almost didn't play at all,
Right.
and uh, and I just happened to keep playing here and there because of Don's Arcade mostly.
Hmm.
And yeah, one day, B-Tran was there, and started playing with him a lot. And I don't know, like I just felt a little inspired. And then TFC got announced. TFC, what was it, 2017? I think
Was it the year with the Japanese players or the year before that?
the year with four Japanese. KO couldn't make it, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other four did. And I guess probably it was the summertime, and that tournament was in like the end of September or October.
Yeah,
I think it
around
was the
there.
beginning of October. So I just started playing Ken. I was like, you know what? I had already started playing him a lot in like the weekly dons session,
Right.
and I just was like, you know what, this fits. I mean, there are like some other reasons too that I felt like through all these years I was slowly getting better at like analyzing third strike, and just, I mean, you just naturally get a little better if you think about the game here and there.
Right.
And I always have 5 star to sort of like, I get to look at his gameplay and think about that. And I
Yeah.
thought, you know what, like I don't see any other Kens really playing like this at all.
Right.
And by this I mean like he has a really complete move set. And when you play Ken, it's like it's kind of doing the character a disservice if you don't have like all forms of the game like on lock. Like
It's
you need to
it's the same
confirm
with
all your
Chen,
hits.
right? Like both characters are very similar in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. You need to convert your hits. You need to take advantage of your knockdowns. And a lot of players just don't really do that. They play the character like, I don't know, like they think the normals and like having a top tier super is enough, and it's like it's not enough.
And even then, like there's a majority of players that are, right around the mid level that don't even do I'm not even going to call them tricky things, but they don't have set play after the super.
Mm-hmm. No.
So like, they it takes, you know, half of what's good after that super away. And like, you know, we've had conversations about, Deshiken and his choices after super and stuff, but like if you're not
Yeah.
playing against the highest level players where you're forced to not go for those, left right high low sort of mix-ups, then it 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 does you a disservice to not be doing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
what was your experience like swapping from Oro to Ken? Like, was it an easy transition, or was it like were there some bumps along the way?
Pretty easy because I had already been thinking about it for a long time.
And you already
So it
played
was
Ryu, so it's not like it's a huge jump.
right. I think the biggest thing is just the muscle memory, like the um I mean, what do they call it? Like image training, where like when you're thinking about something and then you have to do it in a match.
Right.
It's like all the things I'm thinking about that I'm telling myself, you know what, I can do this too. Like as far as like looking at high level Ken players,
Hmm.
um, I'm then I have to do that in a match, and it takes a little while. Like you have to go like, you know what, like you have to
You
kind
have
of
to focus on that, right?
mentally smack yourself on the hands every time you're missing like the critical thing that you needed, or is like your focus for that match.
Right.
So stuff like confirming medium punch. I mean, sadly, a lot of Kens like aren't that comfortable with it, and in a way, it is weird. It does take a while to get like comfortable where every time you're hitting that button in the right space, that's what you're looking for, and like doing it.
And I mean, a lot of players don't even confirm off of far medium punch, right? They're just like, oh well,
Right.
the only things that exist to me are crouch medium kick, crouch medium punch, and short short.
Right. And that's kind of like the thing about Ken, I think, is you don't want to have that many mindless buttons.
Right.
Like if your strings if you just have these buttons, these strings, where you're doing like, short, short, stand medium kick into like stand hard kick, and it's just all like the immediate, like when one thing recovers, you're hitting the next button.
Hmm.
You're not really focused on each move. You're just doing a sequence that you like feels good to you,
Right.
and that's not like the appropriate way to play Ken, really. So you kind of have to teach yourself that every single thing you're doing is like an important move.
Right. Less is more.
Yeah.
And also, like, the more buttons that you get, the further you get pushed away, which makes it easier for your opponent to deal with your next choice. So, like,
Yep.
after short, 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 you get a free high parry for the standing roundhouse, and then you can low block.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, a lot of players also don't realize just how, negative a lot of Ken's stuff is. So, like, you can
Hmm.
jump parry out for free in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
It's
and
risky
and
because of his
for
DP, but it's stuff that like you can do.
and for pressure, I would say a lot of mid-level players maybe don't realize how comfortable you're making the other player if they're way better than you by doing these things.
Right.
I mean, it just makes the other player go like, "Oh, there's no threat here." Like the next move is it's nothing. Like it isn't there isn't a next move basically. You're not setting yourself up for like continuing sequences that work.
Right.
You're just hitting like buttons.
So,
So,
what's an example of you like applying that sort of pressure that you feel works?
I would say like jump moves with Ken are really a big thing.
That's something that a lot of
Uh,
players don't use properly.
right.
Like when you look at especially mid-level Kens or people who are just learning the character, they love cross-up medium kick. They don't use
Yeah.
jump roundhouse like ever. And
Yep.
like when you watch the top Kens, they're all like varying their timings, right, between what buttons they're using. Because
Hmm.
a lot of Kens don't go for like early jump roundhouse that hits you right at the top of the head, confirm DP, or
Yes.
confirm super or whatever. There's a lot of ways that you can vary your timing that aren't taken advantage of by a vast majority of people who play the character.
Exactly. That move is so important right there. Um, you know, that early jump roundhouse into uh, confirm jab DP or super is what allows Ken to have jump pressure, like to have, that threat off of his jumps that way. And
Right.
if you don't have it, there's no reason for the other player to
Fear your jumps.
respect your moves that much.
Right. Because the worst case scenario at that point is just okay, I got crossed up and now we're playing rock paper scissors. Cool. Like
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
cross up medium kick is essentially Okazeme. But
Yeah. And I mean, and even the cross up medium kick is like the higher you go with that move, you realize, oh my God, like Ken versus Ken, let's say.
yeah,
I'm gonna play players now who like they know a cross up medium kick is coming and they're just gonna parry the other way and then instant DP.
yeah,
And
or
suddenly you're like, oh wow, like my little like pressure my little play for pressure, sort of soft pressure I would call it, I guess, is like just invalidated before it even begins. So you're like
yeah,
just just screwed mentally.
and like in general, regardless of the character that people play, they don't really use movement to change their jumps, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a conversation I've had, especially with some Dudley players, where like you really need to move back and forth and neutral jump and like, I mean, neutral jump obviously isn't as strong with like Ken, but like,
Yeah.
you know, even with Dudley, neutral jump roundhouse at certain spacings, obviously matchup dependent, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, that forward or backward movement that you have from your walk really sets things up because, just a slight micro step back could make it so that you whiff and your opponent, tries to parry and you get your free throw.
Yeah, or a neutral jump, you have the possibility of checking like a dash in with like extreme damage,
Yeah. There's
So
a
players who are a little too wild get I don't know, put in their place, get checked.
right.
So, yeah.
And especially with Ken, like the ability to do things at the correct spacing and not just, okay, I'm at spacing for cross up medium kick. Or, I've done like crouch short short. Okay, now I can jump crossover medium kick. um, so I mean like they're using pressure to like set jumps up and stuff is definitely a viable option, but you definitely need to vary it with, movement choices as well. And
Absolutely.
that's something that like variation, regardless of the character that you're playing, is super important in this game.
Yep. And all those sort of like pressure situations, if you're too predictable with them, there's just giant gaps there. That's not like the higher you go, like player skill wise, the more they're just like, oh, cool, like short jump. Now I can do like a bunch of things to this jump, walk under, like anti air, dash out, super jump out.
Right.
So those sort of situations are too loose, I would say. you're just giving, like, the gaps are big, and good players find their way out of them.
Right. So you mentioned that when you were not playing all that much that you didn't really practice, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
when would you say that you started practicing a lot?
So I never practiced, actually. Even learning the Oro stuff, I just learned it in matches.
Right. That's sort of like the Japanese mentality of only playing it in the arcade, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Third Strike is execution wise a pretty easy game for most characters.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually there are going to be things like you can take to another level, and
Like the crap
situational practice.
that Kuroda does with uh, the charge moves, like this fireball and all that
Yeah,
stuff. Like charge partitioning with Oro can basically get you a lot of extra damage, but
exactly.
it takes a lot of time and effort to learn that stuff.
Yes, and at the time, I mean, it barely existed. I mean, I didn't even see Kuroda do that until like 2013 or something. I
Yeah.
can't remember when he was playing a lot of Oro, but
I mean, if you think about it, right? There so much of this game's tech didn't come out until it was over a decade old.
yes,
So like,
yes.
I'm right now I'm working on a spreadsheet for, Yun stuff, and one of the things is like beginners Yun combos, and I label them the 2000 2K combos from like
Mm-hmm.
very early, forward medium kick, forward fierce, like as early as you can remember.
Mm-hmm.
But that stuff still works, and even though it's not optimized, it gets the job done for a decent amount of players.
Yeah, right. Um, so I didn't do, like, I did a little bit of training mode when OE came out, and all I really did was I looked at damage. Like, I tried to optimize like the basic Oro moves. Like, I remember at the time figuring out that, like, the chicken loop into medium uppercut
Yeah.
was, uh, I believe, the same damage but less meter build than doing medium punch, super jump, hard kick as the
Yep.
ender.
Hmm.
So just like a few things like that around that time. Um, but that was like the only training mode I'd ever done for Third Strike until around, man, I want to say, like, did I even training mode before TFC? I didn't. I really started training mode like when one of my buddies, I met a guy who plays Remy in SoCal named Fito, and he needed a lot of help like learning this game at like a higher level,
Right.
but he was kind of promising,
Hmm.
and I just ended up, yeah, like the last probably 2 years is really like when I've started doing like extensive training mode. Um,
So what are
yeah,
things that you go through and you practice now, or that you practiced when you started to actually use training mode?
um, mostly situational things like parrying, yeah, like parry punishes, or like recording, responding to like recordings, like how to get like damage off of a jump over, stuff like that. I'm more into that than combo practice, because the combos are like, you should kind of know what your max damage combos are.
I mean, even
Um,
then, like your max damage changes based on characters, so it's really
yeah.
finicky. Like there's all sorts of information of like medium fierce fireball super does less damage against some characters than just medium fierce super. And then if it's below a
Mm-hmm.
certain threshold of HP, then medium fierce fireball super always does more damage. So it's like there's a lot of different things. I mean, it's minuscule amounts of difference for the most part, but it still exists.
Absolutely. I mean, you can get as deep with it as you want. And I do a little of that too, but I'm just more into uh, situational stuff, Oki setups, like checking if things are real or not. I mean, in terms of like I don't know, pressure situations.
Like,
Um,
what's an example of, checking if something's real?
um, like recently, I did a lot of just experimenting versus Ibuki with Remy and Ken,
Hmm.
because obviously we have Tenrin and SoCal, so we get to play a very strong Ibuki all the time.
Right,
And there are moves where I'm just not really sure like what they're doing because I don't Ibuki on that level.
right.
I don't play Ibuki like that, so I can't be sure what's even going on. And things like Ibuki's uh, normal canceled into her command dash,
Okay, yep. Her, like, stand
stuff
medium
like
kick
that.
and her command dash, or whatever.
Yeah, quarter circle forward
Kick,
kick.
yeah. Usually light kick.
Off. Yeah, light kick is the fastest recovery, and it turns out it's always like at least -3 or -4. So just like testing things like that.
I know
Um,
twins can stand light kick it, so it's got to be -4.
yeah, it might even be more. So yeah, I
Yeah.
discovered Ken can just target combo it if you're kind of tight timing, but possible.
But that's
Ground
another that's
DP
another
easy.
another thing is like, developing your punishes is very important, and these situational punishes is just as important as anything. Like, knowing what your opponent can do and looking for that is, the next level that a lot of players need to get to. They need to be, okay, the Ibuki is going to use command dash. Okay,
Mhm.
well, now how does the matchup change once I show that that punish is there for me, right?
Right, and it will. It should change if your opponent is good.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's all like for that stuff. For me, like I don't feel like I have giant like deficiencies in my sort of like the macro vision of my gameplay.
Your game
So
plans,
now,
so to speak.
yeah, so now it's my strategies are decent, I guess. So now I'm drilling down and getting like fine tuning those micro details. So I do a lot of that lately. Um, I mean, for all the Remy stuff I've learned, it's a little different because I've taught myself like how to charge partition and a lot of like unique combos based on that. But since that's for Remy and not Ken, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But I have spent a lot of time doing that stuff, and I feel like learning other characters has helped me a lot in the last like couple years.
In regards to what?
Just seeing the game a different way, like seeing how characters work. Third Strike has a really cool thing that aside from like the 2D game, like let's look at like Oki. Aside from just the 2D aspect of it of high low throw, that's like the two-dimensional view in my mind. Third Strike has like a four-dimensional like time view of things where you can delay things, you can like move your spacing back to avoid certain things, which again is like using time
Right.
and like that's something that I didn't really appreciate early on about the
Right.
game. I certainly was around players who were doing a lot of really amazing things, but sometimes like a player has a really good idea of how third strike works, but maybe like their other parts, the scaffolding holding up some of their really brilliant ideas is a little flimsy. So like
Right.
they lose in other ways. Um, and I
I
never
can
really
raise
back
my
then
hand for that.
respected that. I never really respected it back then. I was like, well, like, why is this guy like, wow, that what a cool move, but he's like not that strong of a player, and I didn't really get it.
Right.
So nowadays, I'm way more respectful and honoring of all the work that it really takes to be good at third strike. It's not a easy game at all.
So, going back to the Oki situation you were talking about, right? I made
Uh-huh.
that video breaking down Okizeme and knockdowns for, you know, mid-level players, right? Explaining the things that, the nitty-gritty, so to speak. And if anyone
Mm-hmm.
hasn't watched it, I do suggest that you do so. Basically, everyone that I've talked to has, appreciated, the knowledge that they got, even you in some cases. Um, but like, the high-low throw in this game is a lot different than other games, right?
Mm.
Because, like I said 100 times over in a bunch of different places, but like overheads are few and far between. So the
Yeah.
highs in this game are almost non-existent, right? As far as true highs.
Hmm.
And majority of the true highs in the game you don't really get a whole lot off of unless you're Dudley or Ken's back medium kick or whatever.
Right.
So like
Yep.
the high-low throw game doesn't really evolve until parry comes into play.
Hmm.
So like until players have enough knowledge to know when and how to parry and stuff, then it doesn't really evolve past just low block and throw or jump out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So like taking it to the next level requires, a lot more understanding of the game. And going back to your point of
Yes.
the timing stuff, delays. If you don't know what guard jump is or how it functions or anything, delaying things doesn't really get you much. I mean, it can,
Yeah.
obviously. It's situational, but one of the main reasons why people delay things is to beat guard jump.
Hmm.
So like if your opponent doesn't guard jump, your delays mean less.
Well, I would interject and say one of the I don't think guard jump is that common in America, first of all. I mean,
Right.
you play online against like Nika and stuff, so you probably see it a lot. I mean, I get to play against Henry and he uses it. But on the whole, like it's something you'll have to work on versus very specific players.
Right.
But I actually think time is strong against the parry game. Like people who
Yes.
are guest parrying
Yes, that too.
is I in SoCal there are a lot of Urian players, couple good Denjin Ryus. I used to have the hardest time against those two characters. Uh,
Because you were
doesn't
playing
matter
on
what character.
cadence?
Doesn't matter what character I pick. I just didn't respect that they can guess into such a high value, you know, like risk return.
Right.
Uh,
Cooney is the perfect example of that. And he's not
yeah.
even always guessing, so to speak. It's just like the amount of return that you get from a successful parry. You know,
Hmm.
uh, Genki with his Dudley is one of those players that comes to mind. Like his red parries are obscene by comparison to a lot of players, and his
Hmm.
Dudley gets a lot of mileage out of those red parries.
Yeah. But if we're just talking about the basic like knockdown mix up game or whatever meaty
Right.
game, it's like
You didn't
it,
appreciate that you could do things other than meaties.
I was being very stubborn, and really like time is just one of those things that will open those players up. I mean,
Right.
throw them a couple times, and then instead of meeting, you just walk back and watch as they whiff throw and give you a nice opening.
Right.
And that's just super basic, but like the idea for me is that you're using that aspect of the game and you're really like averting a lot of risk. You're giving yourself a reaction punish versus having to like guess high low.
Right.
Like I can get the confirm off of high low with Ken, but I'm guessing whether, which
The
one's going to
opponent's gonna
work.
parry or if they're gonna block or whatever.
Yeah, so if I move back and they whiff something or do something, I'm just blocking. Like they have to do something really crazy to, convert off that situation. Whereas I'm like, locked and loaded and ready to convert whatever I see there.
Right. And
So
in
that's
the
like
in the worst case, if they don't do anything at all, and you walk
yeah,
back, you still have position advantage.
yeah, then you're just fine. Like you just play it out back to neutral. And if they're in the corner, you might already be winning that handily. So
Right.
I think that's underutilized by a lot of players.
So is that something that you're still working on, like perfecting?
Yeah, I mean it's like a absolutely, because once you start like using that, it starts to become more character specific and more. I mean, there's kind of its own meta to that.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's just an ongoing thing. I think even the Japanese, like you see them evolving a little bit in how they, what they do in those positions.
Right. But especially at the highest level of play, like understanding when meaties are appropriate, when walking back is appropriate. It all comes down to reading your opponent and what they're most likely to do on their wake up.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
like that's not a lot of. I mean, especially at the mid level, a lot of players are just going rock paper scissors, rock paper scissors, rock paper scissors,
Yeah.
as opposed to like forcing the opponent to make decisions that sort of favor you.
Hmm.
As I talked to Nika last. As he talked about was making your opponent make the decisions that you want them to make.
Yeah. Yeah. You should be playing rock paper scissors, but you have two of the moves.
Right. So since you don't really practice as much now, is there anything that you wish you practiced in the beginning? Like, do you wish you went into training mode and practiced your combos earlier? Do you wish you started looking at situations earlier, or what have you?
um. Wow. It's hard to like think back because I I kind of like hold myself accountable to things now, and I want to keep getting better.
Right.
But back then, I kind of didn't care as much. I mean, I always fell back on this thing of like, well, that guy's been playing like 10 years longer than I have, like competitively.
Right.
And I would do that a lot. I would just be like, well, I did pretty well. I got third. Cool. You know, for a guy who doesn't like put a lot of effort into this game, like I'm all right.
Right.
And now, I mean, now I've been playing for 10 years. So uh, I can't really like fall back on that anymore. And I just have to like take a cold, hard look. And that's kind of what drives the practice, is
Right.
that I tell myself like I can't be lazy anymore. One
Eventually,
of the reasons,
eventually, as a player, you get to the point where there stops being things that you can blame, and then you just go,
yeah,
okay, well, I'm the only person I can really blame for that loss. How do I
mm-hmm.
fix this?
Yeah. One of the things that made me want to play, like, gave me confidence to play Ken was Kara DPs. I don't know what it is about Third Strike, but this game has like some of the most misinformation of anything, any competitive game I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I remember back at Denjin, like the few people who could do Kara DPs, you could like ask them how they do it, and they couldn't really tell you like what was going on. They'd be like, "Will you car off of medium kick?" Uh, and it felt like no one would give you a straight answer on like how to do that.
Right.
Um, so one of the funny things is when I met Tran and he was playing, he would pick Ken and he could just like car DP almost all the time. And I was like, "What? Like, show me exactly what you're doing, because I don't know how to do this and I've been playing quite a while now."
Right.
And like he just showed me like in person, and after that I could do it a lot. And I was like, dude, if someone would have just like showed me this way back then, I mean, I would have had a different view on this.
Right.
um, and even now when people say like, oh, it's such a hard technique and stuff, I mean, I think it's essential if you really want to be super strong with Ken. um, I mean, if you're a super beginner, don't focus on it, but eventually you're going to have to like tackle it, and it's not that hard. And
No.
if you're having problems with it, it's just based on like technique, and you need to eventually have the breakthrough that like allows you to do it a lot consistently.
Right.
So as
So
far as like training back then, it's hard to train when you just don't even know what to train for. It's like,
yeah. That's
Kind of what
that's
I'm.
one of the biggest things that new players have to overcome is not knowing what to practice. And what you should practice varies from player to player. Everyone's at a different point. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
there's a guidebook or a you know school course or whatever to run you through. Okay, you should learn this. You should learn this. You should learn this at this point, and because of this, etc., etc.
Yep.
And everyone learns differently. So you learning through your play in the arcade is a lot different from how I learn or Nika
Right.
learned or whatever, right?
Yeah, and it's tough. Like depending on how you learn, you may not have to be in the right situation um, to have those breakthroughs.
Right.
So that's like one of the hardest things about I think the old fighting games, especially.
But like the misinformation is really prominent, and
Mm-hmm.
the misunderstanding is also very prominent. Like most people, when I explain that Kara DP is a recovery cancel, they're like, "What?"
Mm.
And that's why when a lot of people explain it, they're like, you got to do the second DP and you have to hold down forward, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's for a couple reasons, right? It's for that recovery cancel when you land from your first DP, and it's to make sure that you hit the crouching medium kick instead of stand medium kick. So it's sort of, double prong attack to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. Like the way that I do it is different from how everyone else does it. I do my first DP and then I immediately go to down back, and then as soon as my back foot lands, I do the second DP fast. And a lot of people do it slow. So,
Yep.
there's varying ways that it can be accomplished, but it's all about finding how it works best for you. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
know why Kara DP works to begin with, like a DP, then it's kind of hard to figure out what's best for you.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, are there anything that like you thought were very important that needed to be learned, but like ended up just being like the extra thing? Like I know we just talked about DP, how it's fundamentally part of a very strong Ken's game, but even at
Mm-hmm.
the highest level, Kens don't get it more than 50%. Like there's no Ken in the world, including Deshiken, that get it more than 50% when it matters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like outside of that sort of a thing, um, you know, is there anything else?
Um. Hmm. Geez, what a question. Uh, outside of that, I can't think of anything specifically, but part of like what I'm thinking about is that Ken is so like all his options are like so balanced.
Okay, what do you
So
mean by that?
like most of his moves should convert into DP or super.
Okay,
So like basically all your choices are going into those two things, and you just have to like um your like move selection is what matters
right.
more than like you. I don't know, like because it's so simple. It's not like there's situations where I don't know there's some esoteric combo you can do here. Like it's always like a very few select things.
Right. I mean, Ken's combos are very small, like as far as
Yeah,
hit wise go.
yeah. So I would say like the thing people miss is like literally the strategy of the character.
Right.
Like you should be aiming to do it that way versus like poking. Uh, people want to poke a lot, and they feel comfortable with stuff like EX Fireball, but all of those are just so small return that when you play like the right style of player, they're going to be guessing into stuff that's like worth three times what your little combo is worth or your
Right.
little poke.
So would you
And
would you say that meter management might count there then?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Meter management is big because you have to like change what you're doing in that moment. Like okay, let's say you burn a super with Ken. You hit connect a super,
Hmm.
you get the knockdown, you go for Oki situation, it doesn't work out. So now you don't have a knockdown, you're back to neutral, and you only have like 20% of a bar.
Right.
So instead of like barging in, depending on the matchup or many factors, instead of just going forward like your strategy is going to be to connect another super, you should be switching your gameplay to be how do I get my bar up to like DED or full super level so that now I can go in comfortably again.
Right. But
And
at the same time, you can't let stuff like DED fully dictate your game plan or your
no,
gameplay because it can get read pretty easily.
I guess my point is like when you're at 20% bar and you go all the way up to DED, you're basically locked and loaded.
Right.
So essentially you're in, you now have the green light to play again, to play like that style, like around your super. Um, and I didn't put a lot of like thought into what I'm about to say about it, but Ken really shouldn't be aggressive without super. So
That
I
can be
think it's
said for
just
a lot of characters, right?
yeah, absolutely. And that's why Third Strike can be a deceivingly like defensive game. A lot of people see it as fast paced and a big guest can like have huge returns. But watch like pro level Dudleys play. They'll sit always until they get like close to a bar before
Or
they
at least
start.
50%.
Yeah, they want an EX or a super before they start making risky before their decision making, like I don't know, because it makes sense like that they can't convert into anything, so why would they go in until they have that
Right.
that condition like set up.
Until they have that, bar to get into EX machine gun blow, they don't really have corner carry. They don't really have damage outside of, DP. So like
Yeah,
their best
and
case scenario at round one fight, jump forward, roundhouse, DP. Like, that's sort of the best thing that they can get. But as soon as you've whiffed
mm-hmm.
like three or four crouching medium punches, standing medium punches, stand roundhouses, your next jump in now leads to EX machine gun blow, which then leads to the corner in a lot of cases.
and big meter gain, whereas I mean a lot of other stuff is not going to be like that. Like I mean if you land that jumping combo, amazing, but it's kind of predictable and kind of just a
Right.
one shot move. So most most top Dudleys are going to go with the consistent strategy and whiff for a while and just hold their position.
Right. Holding position is a thing that I haven't fully mastered myself, but it's very, very important when it comes to this game. Is knowing that you can't always be moving backwards or moving forwards, and knowing where you're best positioned to force decisions to happen.
It's super hard because um, I don't know like how other people feel, but I never think of myself as having like particularly strong footsies or in some ways I think the footsie game is a little uh, like high variability, high variance
Right.
um, to begin with. So
Especially
I
with parry involved.
yeah, but at the same time, I know in a matchup if I'm gonna like just back up to the corner or just let someone like impart their will on me, then I'm gonna lose anyway. So like, it's funny, but I just literally tell myself like, don't back up from this position.
Right.
You need to hold right here. And even if I'm just blocking moves, like let's say Chun Li is like a good example. Here, like it's really like you kind of want to move back, but you just can't. You can't too much. Um,
There are a lot
so you
of
just have to.
mid-level players that like jump themselves into the corner a lot.
Oh, jumping, and that's actually how I came to this. Was that jumping? For some reason, when you're just a newbie at fighting games, like jumping feels amazing.
Right.
And that's the other part of that is I would be like I have to hold my position on the ground, right?
Right.
Because if I start jumping, I'm just eating moves. Like when you play really good players, not specific to third strike, they're just not going to let you jump
Right.
almost at all if you're playing like super top level guys. Um, so yeah, you just have to like, you have to respect that and kind of do it. I don't know, fake it until you make it. Like you just have to do it until like you're kind of comfortable with that situation now,
Right.
because you'll have some successes, you'll figure out a few things, and honestly, I think on some level, when you start to have a lot of poise in the neutral like that, it becomes really it affects your opponent. They can kind of feel that your mentality is like, wow, he's just like standing right here, not backing down. Maybe poke them a few times, and then suddenly they feel a lot of pressure.
I
So
mean,
there's like a mental factor there.
Neiman does that a lot, where he'll just back up and he'll
Mm-hmm.
sit there and he'll just be like, "Crap, what do I do now?" Because like, depending on how your character approaches that situation, like, it then becomes your job to make him do something, and
Right.
it's not always easy.
No, no, he's kind of an expert at that.
So you mentioned that you originally started playing by feel. Would you say that you
Mhm.
have turned into a more analytical player as you've learned more and more about the game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that that's sort of a common trend for players?
Hmm. I'm not sure because, like, the best players that I've ever talked to in this game really don't like share their methodology that way. I would I would wager that yeah, they're pretty analytical that way.
Right.
Don't yeah.
There was a conversation I had the other night where we were talking about Tenren doing commentary for Co-op Cup,
Mm.
and they were like, I've asked Tenren all these questions, and he'd just give me like the basic bare bones things, and then you hear him on Co-op Cup doing commentary, and he's doing like, Dudley's negative here, and this, that, and the other thing, and it's just like, oh, there's definitely a lot more behind it than that's let on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like, I think that sort of playing by feel can get you to a point, but eventually you need to be analytical about your decisions, and you need to learn more about the game. You can get to be a good player, but you're gonna stop and plateau for a while if you don't like, you know, go forward and learn more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah. There's just going to be points where there's no other like playing by feel won't really like I don't know, you're not going to have the success you want in certain situations without truly breaking it down. Unless you're just just a genius. I don't know.
So, what was your mindset as far as improvement then before like watching videos of yourself playing was available to you?
Um, oof.
Because like, is that a big thing for you, watching your own matches back to see your mistakes?
Um, yes, but I don't think it used to be.
Okay. When
Like
did
if
that
there were matches
evolution happen
recorded.
then?
Ah, geez. I would just say once I knew more about the game. So like in the last couple years, I don't think like it's it's kind of hard in Third Strike because there are some characters like Ibuki is a pretty good example. I mean, you might lose to an Ibuki like Tenrin, and you're just like, well, I don't know. I guess I'll do better next time. Like maybe I won't get caught by this or that.
Right.
Like kind of like you're gonna pick these major points that you think were like what was going on, but
But that may not
um,
be the case.
yeah, it may have like it may have had much less bearing than you think.
But also
So
that's it's a big deal for people that don't live in Japan as far as getting strong matchup experience. Like,
mhm.
you played Oro, And can you name any strong auros in the country right now?
Um, in America?
Yeah, where you would be like, that dude's capable of making top eight or whatever.
Nah, not really.
So like,
And
what
yeah,
what stops those characters from, you know, really being used by a lot of players? Like, outside of, Tenren, Marcus, Mr. Part 2, there's not really a whole lot of like competent Ibukis. And, you know, you, there's a lot of mid-level Ibukis, right?
yeah.
Um, but as far as getting to that next step, there's very few players that have taken that.
I think it's just player. It's based on the player pool. Um, if you've ever really talked to Tenrin at length, and also have like a lot of playing experience against him, you would realize like he's honestly put an insane amount of work into the character,
Right.
into the game, and I think he's actually just a really strong. He plays other games so like I think Tenrin is like an A class fighting game player just in general, and I think unless you're kind of at that, you could be that level by only playing Third Strike, so that's no problem.
Right.
But the thing is, a lot of people won't get to that level just playing Third Strike. Um, and
So you came from other games before Third Strike.
uh-huh.
What legacy skills do you think were the most important to your success in Third Strike?
um, just the neutral game, like being. I don't know if I'm smart enough to really like verbalize this, but the neutral game in Street Fighter is like a couple things, right? Like, do I want to use a super fast move, like a poke that's fast but low damage
Right.
that my opponent can't react to? Or do I want to do something like they can react to, possibly punish for more return? And at a really basic level, like even with the meter in Third Strike. So Third Strike is a fighting game where you start with 0 bar,
Right.
whereas some fighting games you start with like a super already or whatever. From the beginning of the match, like your pokes have greater importance for like the first 10 seconds of a match in Third Strike.
Right.
And if you're comfortable moving around, finding places to hit the opponent, uh, I mean that's kind of like gonna always give you like a few percent extra, win percentage just by that alone. If the other person doesn't have it,
Right.
so if you've played a lot of Street Fighter 2, just jumping around and being comfortable moving. Um,
Especially if you're comfortable jumping in Street Fighter 2, there's no reason you shouldn't be comfortable jumping in Third Strike with parry.
right, and I mean, in Street Fighter 2, okay, there's something that you kind of learn when you just play it. I mean, I played Street Fighter 2 since I was a kid, just very casually, right?
Right.
But I had like lots of friends to play with when I was like 12 years old. And we would just play matches. And I would say over time, you learn some things like if I jump from really far with Ryu in Street Fighter 2, there's actually kind of a mix up in that if I jump and hit hard kick, it'll hit my opponent. But if I jump and do nothing and they try to anti air, they're going to whiff a move, whether it's an uppercut or even just like a heavy attack. And I can land and I'll be like in range to sweep them
Right.
or punish the DP. I mean, that's a really simple concept, but if you haven't spent a few minutes like mulling that over, it may never really occur to you. Like you may be playing Third Strike and not realize the same thing is in Third Strike.
Right. And a lot of players don't. Like, the difference between a lot of the very strong Dudleys that I've played against in Japan and, Dudleys here is
Mm-hmm.
that those Dudleys in Japan abuse that a lot.
Yeah.
They abuse his small jump arc. They know how to land outside of your ranges. They know how to, limit what pokes and anti-airs that you can use just to make sure that they can get into that range where one decision makes or breaks the game.
Right. Um, so while I don't think there's anything genius about like understanding that situation itself,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of little things like that. And if you've played a bunch of Street Fighter before, and come to Third Strike, you at least have that already.
Right.
Depending on how good you were, you might be pissed off then at parry, like all the OGs were. You know, all the
Right.
guys who are like parry ruins, like all these things I know. But I think Third Strike's really cool because um, kind of both skills matter. There's actually like an interplay between the two.
Right.
Someone who has really godlike footsies, I mean, they now have to realize like how to bait people into like parrying, like a Chun Li who moves forward, like fakes like they're going
You're cutting in and
down
out.
and then like walk back and hard punch it. Sorry, am I okay now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like if you have a Chun Li who's able to walk forward and kind of faint, like
I know you're cutting in and out
pretty.
again. Let me try changing
Sorry.
the. It's all right. Let me try changing the Discord server. Okay, let's try again. Hello? All right, so now that it's on US West, hopefully that fixes things. So you're talking about Chun-Li.
Oh yeah, like just simple like footsie concepts. Like a Chun Li who's able to feint, like going low and then walk back to, fierce you in the face.
Yeah.
That's a really basic move, but I mean, if you're high level at other fighting games, um, in Third Strike, that's you taking advantage of like baiting parries.
Right. Another thing that people
So you
don't
can use those
really.
skill sets. You can adapt them to the game.
Right. Another thing that a lot of people don't really use all that much is like when you watch Nuki, right? There's a lot of random downs, right? Or if you watch MOV, they or
Mm-hmm.
it looks like they're random, but they're constantly pressing down, and it's not really for down parries, right? It's for maintaining that position that they want because the down
Mm-hmm.
interrupts their walk since it's so fast. So
Right.
like, you know, while that doesn't apply to every character in the game, there's it applies to Ibuki, it applies to Chun, it applies to a couple characters where like if you want to maintain a specific space, you need to stop your walks with downs. You can't just like keep walking.
Right.
Um, so like being able to use that as a feint as well is like the next level of things.
Yeah. That's just maximizing. I don't know that aspect of the game, the
Yeah.
system.
Um. So now that you actually do watch your matches back,
Mm-hmm.
what do you look for?
I tend to focus on where I'm taking damage, and where I'm unsuccessful with like my moves.
So
So
what do
like
you
I
mean
guess
by
you
unsuccessful with your moves?
like offense that didn't work, I guess. Um,
Do you have an example off the top of your head? If not, it's fine.
well, I think an example would be like in the neutral, if I want to set up, say, like a dash play, and I do like crouch light kick, dash forward into something, someone caught me. I want to analyze that a little bit because I want to go like, wait, like a Chun Li or something. Oh, he had like super. Like, why did I do that?
Right.
Like, should I? uh, There's not always a clear answer, and sometimes it just is just philosophical, like on how you want to play the game.
Right.
Um, Kind of molding your gameplay, your strategy in the future, based on looking back at the past. Like, oh, I don't like to lose a match this way.
Right.
So why would I ever make that play in that situation again?
That makes sense.
Um, yeah. And I mean, I do a lot of that, but yeah, mostly like just where I'm getting hit. Um, it's like always important to me to like I give myself leeway on like mix-ups.
Okay.
Um, basically, you have to be fair to yourself. So you have to look at something and go like, well, that was a really hard mix-up. Now that I've seen it, I don't know like what'll happen next time, but I think I can react to that.
Right.
Um, I mean, I still see people like talking a lot about like Ibuki uh, like launcher mix-ups.
That's not
She has
real.
that little side to side thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not real. I haven't labbed how to like deal with that, but I just block it because I've seen it a lot, and I don't find it to be that difficult to kind of see the situation coming and go like, well, I think he's going to be this side or that side. I think there's like a visual tell in there. Um, but for guys who are still struggling with it, I suggest that they watch it a few times. I
Right.
mean, if not, just go into training mode and learn how to set it up and then just do it themselves and figure out that, like, oh, it's like he's usually going to cross you up because if he hits you early in the air, that's like the only thing that can happen.
Right.
And if he delays a lot, then it's probably not a true meaty, right? Which is, I think, what you're saying. If he goes front side.
Yeah, if he goes front side, I believe, like Nika and I talked about this particular thing, is that basically like any sort of left-right mix-up after a reset. So like if Chun parries and then does like stand roundhouse or stand jab, and where she can dash and she can be left-right, right, depending on how she
Mm-hmm.
dashes.
Yeah.
That's the exact same situation as the Ibuki reset, and it's also the same situation as Ken's post super Okizeme,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't know where he's gonna land, like realistically, right? There are some tells that you can use, but you can just do a delay tech. So what I mean by that is you choose a direction, you tap that direction, you hold it, and then you delay throw. And what this does is that if you end up blocking, your throw doesn't come out, and then you can punish, right? So if you're
Mm-hmm.
Ken, you can super Ibuki's stand roundhouse, or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
if they land on the other side, you get a parry into a throw. So this makes it so that the Ibuki has to change their decision. They have to delay their choice even more, or they have to, you know, go low. So that's when you can watch for their movement after the fact and make a decision as to how you want to approach it.
Yeah.
Because like they have to walk forward to get crouch light kick into Raida, or they can stay max distance and do crouch light kick into EX Rekka or
Mm-hmm.
Samuji. Um, or they can just walk forward throw or sweep. But all those things require you to show your opponent that you're not free to that mix up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because while mixing those things in from the get go can be, you know, useful and they can be successful, you know, there's always that phrase, don't stop doing what's working, right? Until your opponent shows you that they're going to deal with it.
Right. And from the vantage of the player who's watching their match, presumably they lost.
Right.
You should watch, and if it's something that's hitting you that often, then everything you just said about that move is what that person should be,
Looking
you
for.
know, yeah, they should be thinking about that and break it down as much as they can so their understanding is at a level where now it's less threatening. It
Right.
doesn't mean like you're not going to get caught by it because it's kind of set up to do that.
Right.
It's a consistent, I mean, even if it's like there are aspects of it that are not real or whatever, it works because it's a it's a real move that they can do,
Yeah.
and you're trying to minimize the damage it does to you. uh, and I mean,
But
take it as far as you can.
the point is to try to break it down to the point where you can make it into a mind game between two players as opposed to a one-sided mind game.
Right. Yeah, you want to be making intelligent decisions there and not just guessing
And this
based
is
on like, I don't know, whatever.
this is where like game knowledge matters a lot too. So like if
Yeah.
you just simply don't know and you don't have the inclination to go find out,
Hmm.
then you're kind of gonna get stuck being hit by that over and over and over again, and you're just gonna plateau
Like the
until
Ken mix-up is actually really similar. So I think if a person is having trouble with that, they should take their character, they should pick Ken and record him doing a few things, right? Because like every character has their own wake up time, so he can't even really mix up some characters. Like there's not
right,
really a great mix up against twins, for instance.
right,
Dudley, like Dudley, the only mix up isn't even real.
right,
Even with like frame perfect quick recovery, it's basically like a fake out thing, um, as far as I know.
right.
Uh, but if you're having trouble, like if you play Ryu and a Ken is always fucking you up with Shippu mix ups, just record Ken on 1P and 2P side doing a super jump at the right time and see where he lands. Like do it a few times, like do it a little late. Like do it late enough that it's not even going to be a true meaty and see what happens, and you'll understand really quickly that like usually the Ken's going to cross you up. Um
Unless they're like whiffing a normal in the air, or they take a micro step back in the time that you're falling, which you can still technically see, but it's hard, right? It's the same thing with the micro step forward to set up the
exactly.
super
The
jump.
micro step is actually how you can be more consistent with the Shippu mix ups. So you have to get used to like looking for that a little bit.
And also how you time your frame kill. Like there's a lot of Kens that frame kill with crouch medium punch, stand medium punch, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
against certain characters. So
Yeah.
like knowing how to delay that by a frame so that you land in front as opposed to behind, because their quick rise moves them enough so that you won't cross them up anymore. Like
Right.
little things like that make all the difference at like the highest level.
Exactly. But even for like just an intermediate player, they can learn a lot really fast, like get some very consistent something that's going to help them for a long time to come with about 20 minutes of like sitting on, training mode
Especially
and
with the
just
new
break that
LUA
down a little
stuff,
bit.
where you can actually randomize the decision that Ken does. So you can program it so that Ken does crouch medium kick super, and then either does super jump forward Tatsu, super jump forward button to land in
Right.
front, super jump forward empty crouch short short, super jump forward after a micro step forward where he crosses up and then he does like strong fierce or like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways that you can go about practicing this if you know how and you want to put the time and effort in.
Right.
And that's like the thing that matters the most, is the player has to want to put the effort in to begin with.
Yeah, and it can be hard if you're just playing a lot of random online matches, but just take a like, I mean, you do a lot of spreadsheet stuff. Take a mental spreadsheet approach to it and go, you know what? I play a ton of Kens on Fightcade. I might as well put 20 minutes into this to just make myself like I'm going to go from being a C level player to a C plus player right now
Right.
in 20 minutes versus like grinding it out in a match. It could be years before you like have some sort of like
Revelation.
epiphany.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that's how I see the training mode stuff now. But it's tough because, I mean, if you have a lot of footage of yourself, which I mean, luckily I kind of do these days, you can get some good ideas without, I don't know, a lot of effort. Like you watch a few matches, you go, oh, wow, I like keep getting hit by that. I'm just going to think about that for a minute, or training mode or whatever.
It's very hard, even for myself sometimes, to go in watching your own matches looking to just be like, okay, I'm going to learn. Like, because there's a lot of self pride and all that crap that you have to get through
Mm-hmm.
before you break through and are just like, okay, well, my goal is this. Let me go after my goal, as opposed to I don't want to watch my losses because it'll make me feel bad. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just yeah, the lot like losses are tough, of course,
do you watch your
but
wins?
yeah, absolutely.
What do
I
you
watch
look
pretty much
for?
anything that gets recorded of myself.
Do you look for anything different when you're watching your wins?
Mm, I would say on my wins, the opposite of what I'm looking for in my losses. I look at like what worked.
Right.
Like where did I get all my damage? Like okay, that move was pretty good here. Like especially when we're talking about moves that maybe are uncommon for you. Like if
Right.
you did it like something out of your normal game plan and it did really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, kind of is watching wins to me is more like ego reinforcement, like you're
Confidence
giving
boost.
yourself confidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's more what wins are about. Um, unless it's a terrible win. I mean, I've had some like tournament wins where the jitters or playing in 60-degree weather outside at Don's Arcade uh, with cold hands. Uh, I watch a match and I go, oh man, this is a terrible win. Like, how was it so close against like this player?
Right.
And I mean, you have some of that, but that's less often.
So, how often do you watch other players' games, like Japan?
Quite a bit. I there are times where I mean, I'll watch like an hour or two a day of like matches. I mean, often while I'm doing sort of multitasking.
Right. Do you
Um,
only watch Ken stuff, or do you watch just the game?
I watch anything.
Okay. So when you
Yeah.
do find Ken stuff, what exactly are you looking at or looking for when you're watching these games?
Uh, I watch for their mistakes, and I watch in matchups that I'm not familiar with. Um, I watch for like things that I didn't know about, I guess.
What about in
Uh,
matchups that you do know about? So like if you were to watch Deshiken play against a Chun, or if you were to watch Matsuken play against another Ken or something, like what do you look
well,
for that stuff?
like I said, mistakes because I really like watching the game. I didn't do this for a long time. I would watch a top player, like a coop match or something, like a high level, like just the highest stakes, crazy match. And it's easy to get caught up in these players. And like, I used to go like straight up, I used to go like Japanese players, like that highest level, they're just not even making mistakes. But when you watch like really closely, you'll see that like they do. I mean, there's lots of like mistakes or even strategic like missteps.
The thing
Um,
about them though, and even high level American players, just high level players
mhm.
in any game, no matter what, is
Yeah,
you know that mistakes are going to happen, but it's
right.
your ability to go with the flow and just sort of shake that mistake off and be like, okay, now what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, I'm not watching only for
No,
mistakes,
no,
but
I know.
it's like important to just see it. I guess like I'm trying to watch like with a very neutral lens and be like, oh, he messed up right there, and then like, but then he caught this move, or maybe his opponent messed up, and
Right,
I'm like, oh wow, he capitalized on that really well. Like that was a crazy reaction to like an accidental jump or something.
right.
And yeah, I mean, I that's kind of what I look at nowadays. Um, but the strategy stuff is important too because there are just a lot of matchups that I personally recognize that I don't have like a strong base um, playing.
Right.
So when I watch, like I'm looking at like their moves, kind of how they're what spacing they like to keep, where they like to get aggressive. Um, yeah, that's I guess what I'm looking for.
Um, so a lot of this has gone back to your strategy. So let's talk about how you formulate your strategy or your game plans. Like, what do you look for? Does it change based on players, or is it just like a general, like, this is what I want to do in this matchup?
Okay, you had a really interesting like part of your cast with Nika that related to this a bit. Um, so I kind of am like thinking of that. If
Right.
you play someone a long set, like you're talking about a lot of games or a casual session that goes for hours all night, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
it's so much different than playing this game in a 1, 2, 3 game series that decides something important,
Right.
decides a tournament or stakes, has stakes attached to it.
Right.
Now, I'm a pretty like fundamental. I like to think of the matchup first before the player.
Okay.
So the first thing is what works consistently before I get into like the meta of how the other person is handling those, for lack of a better term, good moves.
Okay.
And in a tournament, I guess my mentality always focuses on those like 2 out of 3 tournaments. But I've noticed nowadays to be really like stronger, you kind of have to understand both. Playing off of the player is really, really important. It's just that in one game, I think it's too volatile if that's your whole style.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just the game plan is in parts, and the first part is like the beginning of a match, moves that you think like if you have high value moves from the start of a match, like let's say Ken versus, this is a matchup I'm not that great at, but like let's say Ken versus Elena.
Okay.
I think it's fine to make to make big plays against Elena right away because you're not going to miss like a mid-screen double DP. So anything that you connect on Elena that leads to DP is like massive.
Right.
She doesn't have any easy conversions off of anything except uppercut, and her uppercut's, much worse than yours.
Right.
Arguably, the normals are uh, pretty evenly matched there, but Ken's just got a great super. So like, if you get started early, then like you have a lot of momentum. You can build momentum fast and then maintain it until you like, until the match is over, until you win.
Right.
And that's like how I would think of a match. Like that would be my breakdown is like, okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to feel comfortable making aggressive moves because of how like sort of the win condition I've given myself. But
Right.
you can switch it too if you think a player is able to call out too much of your stuff. Like Ibuki is an interesting one because I would think that I would want to bulldog Ibuki and just like, she has very low health. Very low health. Ken has like good combo options on her in the corner. She has like a weird fall speed or something. Like she's very easy to get like a second hit after a DP in the air. Like even if you hit her like kind of in the mid range, you can still usually sweep her or get a stand medium kick.
Right.
So you have like a lot of like tertiary bonuses in that matchup. However, Ibuki is amazing at like holding her ground against Ken's normals. And Ken has a really hard time being close enough to her to actually get a DP off of any normal,
Right.
like a combo. So it doesn't really work out that way at all. Basically, like that, if I went in with that game plan, it's not going to work.
So,
Um,
if that was your original game plan,
mm-hmm.
how would you go back and reapproach, right?
Yeah, you have to like refine it and go, oh, well, that doesn't work now. But I'm not going to play like a runaway game either, so it's kind of a stalemate in the neutral. It's just that Ken eventually, once he has super, has just, I don't know, just has a lot more to gain off any neutral exchange.
Than Ibuki does.
Yeah, and when she's in the corner as well, like you kind of have a lot of advantages in the corner. I mean, obviously, but like,
Right.
she, because one of the things that Buki has as a win condition is to build up a lot of meter for those free, semi-free, like chip outs.
Right.
And the thing is, if you put her in the corner and she wakes up with like an EX Shoryu, it's not even that bad because while you've taken a little bit of damage, um, she just had to burn like a ton of meter. So now she's back to like square one. So just keeping it even through your pressure is like a part of the strategy.
Right.
But man, how can I put this like easily? So it's like all these little chunks, like little pieces, like like how you want to approach the neutral from the start, and then how things develop based on position. So once you have corner position, or if you're in the corner, I guess you could think about your defensive options and how you like to escape. Um, and then what happens when, like, for instance, like you go into a third round and you have like 2 bars and the Ibuki has 0.
Right.
That's a very strong position, and you should feel really confident in pushing. I mean, I guess it's like poker, right? Like you're suddenly now at the end of the what do they call it, like the when the river and the
Yeah.
turn, or the
Yeah.
turn and the
Turn of the
river.
river. Yeah.
You're at the whole board's uncovered. You have like the bigger hand, and now you have to push really hard to end things and get your returns.
Right.
and and that's like how I don't know, I see it a lot like that. um
It's funny you mentioned that
that's what
because a lot of players equate this game to poker.
There's many aspects that
Overlap.
overlap.
Yeah.
So while some people may see like that sort of like, basically my strategy in this case would be the third round, I'm going to get aggressive to uh, try to end things cleanly, based on what I've already like accrued. I already have an advantage, so now I'm going to like use my advantage into the match. Some people don't see it that way, and they would see it as, I have the advantage, like I'm going to play this as like conservatively as possible because
Because of your advantage. Yeah. There are
yeah, because of the advantage.
there's two sides of that coin, right? You can play
Mhm.
conservatively because you're at advantage. You have the life lead, you have the meter lead, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
where you're playing into making your opponent make a mistake. But not everyone's going to make a mistake, and sometimes you need to force that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would take several, like, it would take you making several mistakes for them to even like to even out the match,
Right.
I think. So there's no point in like playing it super slow and letting them like come back, like just claw their way back, I guess. But it does depend on the matchup as well. So
Of course.
everything is in parts, and I don't even think anything is super deep. It's like, it's just these general like leanings that you're like, you have the thought of like, this is my strategy, and you're committing to it.
Right.
And if it doesn't work out over time, you can refine that and change it. Maybe you go like, wow, it's not appropriate to maybe it is appropriate to just play off the lead really conservatively. That's totally fine, and maybe the correct answer as you gain more experience, wisdom.
Right.
But I guess it's just that each phase of the match is like its own little thing to dissect,
Right.
is really what I'm getting at. Not any specifics beyond that. Simply that you have parts of the match that really have like their own a unique thing going on, a unique dynamic that you can put a lot of thought into, and I think is important.
So when we were talking about you practicing stuff, and you said you look for a lot of punishes and you're dissecting your decisions and stuff, right?
Mm.
Um, so would you say that you're more the type of player that goes and looks for answers rather than, you know, getting answers from somewhere else and just applying it to your own decisions?
Oof. uh, I'm like, I'm getting better at finding the answers on my own,
Okay.
but because I kind of had like high level fighting game execution before I even came into Third Strike competitively,
Yeah.
I've I've always gotten a lot of mileage off of people just giving me like a good idea or move or whatever. Like if someone tells me this is punishable, now I know it, and unless it's really hard to do, I can probably just implement it right there in my gameplay.
Right. So do you
Um,
think, discussion of the game between players, whether it's, you know, that's punishable, or, you can be at this range and nullify this, or whatever. Like, do you think that that sort of back and forth um, is sort of a catalyst to making scenes stronger? Like, there's a lot of players that keep information to themselves, right? You
mm-hmm.
alluded to that earlier. So,
Yeah.
like, the players that are willing to sort of show you the the bad things, right? Whether it's, your mistakes, or, something about the matchup that you don't know that they know, um, no matter how big or how little it is,
Mm-hmm.
that can shape, improvement a lot faster than, if you're left to your own devices and you're stuck going and watching your own videos back, and it may take you, like you were saying, a year to diagnose a problem.
Yeah. I think it's great. It's super preferable to have discourse between players,
Right.
but you kind of need a mutual respect for it to work well. So,
Right.
in my experience, I haven't. I
I've
wish more
had
people.
I've had situations where, like, I'll go and I'll tell people things, and,
Mm,
they'll obviously, for the most part, be at a lower level, and
right,
a lot of people take it as, like, insulting, rather than, like,
right.
the attempt to help you improve.
That's kind of what I was going to say, and I almost wonder with some guys who don't share a lot if it's just the years of that sort of response that's
Right.
conditioned them to just be like, you know what, I let other people figure it out on their own, just like I did, or whatever.
Right.
Um, and yeah, that's why you need the mutual respect. I mean, because you can come at someone with like uh, just not being rude and no condescension or nothing, and just say like, hey, like you should like maybe think about XYZ. And yeah, I mean, it's just up to that player whether they want to take it positively or negatively.
Right.
Uh, and unfortunately, yeah, a lot of guys don't take it that well. So it's really tough.
And it also, like, the type of players that do ask the questions are great, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the worst thing is when players ask the questions and they get the answers and then they don't apply it. And I was in that boat for a long time. I did that shit. And,
Yeah.
I, looking back on it, I was very unappreciative of the information that I was given because I just didn't apply it. Like, to me, when you look for information, if you're given that information, it's on you to apply it. And if, you're playing someone and you give them the same sort of advice for years and years and years, and they're still not doing it, at some point you just got to be like, okay, well, this isn't worth my time. And, you know, after dealing with some players and teaching them things myself, now I understand how some players felt towards me in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's tough. Some players also will do something interesting where they'll give you advice for a while and then you start doing better, you improve, and then they get a little spiteful. I've seen
That's
that.
that's interesting. Like, the whole goal of giving someone advice is to help them improve. And if you get to the point where, they're winning, then obviously you have a place to improve now. So that should be your goal, right? Is to get to that point where you can improve now from playing this player.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that it's easy for them to give advice while they're like winning a lot.
Right.
And suddenly the gap is closed based on a couple little common sense ideas or something. And I don't know. A lot of people can't handle that.
It,
So
it's a shame, but you know, it is what it is.
it takes a strong mentality to really be able to like give people real advice without any sort of bias, because there's also people who give advice and their advice will be like how to lose more against me or them, you know? Like they'll be like you'll beat them and they'll go like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." It's like, "What?" You know, like just I just won the match and you're like telling me like this is a bad move?
So, you know, there are times where I'll do that, but when I do that, it's from a logical standpoint, right? Where, you know, I'll tell them specifically, you know, there's no never in third strike, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, the risk reward behind what you did to me doesn't make sense. You know, whether they can explain it to me or not, you know, doesn't matter. But to me, it just doesn't make sense. Um, but you know, the effectiveness of it isn't for me to really decide, right?
Hmm.
But you know, I always try to use logic when I look at decisions and be like, okay, well, that that either shouldn't work, and at the same time, then you have to go back as a player and be like, if that shouldn't have worked, why did it work?
Yeah, yeah, you can't. The logic is for like consistent moves, but the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
third strike works is that some things just work. I mean, it's just
right.
like because they're unexpected, they're like surprisingly effective.
Like where I've had it where you know someone is playing and they'll do the backup, like the walk back, when you after they knock you down for Oki, and then they'll walk back and then they'll be like, you know, walk back, walk forward, and they're going for like crouch medium kick with Ken or something, and they'll do like wake up, stand fierce, and they'll get hit by it. They'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, you're out of range of everything else, and I know you're looking to do something, so you know, if I have the life lead or something, or if I have the risk reward to do this, then why not?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So when you're playing, what are you looking for when you're trying to like make adaptations to your opponent? Like, are you looking for specific choices on Oki? Like, do they favor high parries? Do they favor low parries? Do they favor techs, jumps, etc.? Or like, how do you go about evolving your game plan um, in game?
This is something that's occupied a lot of my thinking in the game more recently
Okay.
because I think a goal you should have once you're like have a basic understanding of the game is whatever character you play, um, whatever character you play, you should try to break down common moves
Okay.
and find an answer to them. Like find a best case answer to as many things as you can. This could be like if someone whiffs a throw. Most of it applies to like Oki is
Right.
like the basis for this. Like that's the building block. And um, once you kind of have that, I think you can adapt to your opponent in a way that's it's really stable. It doesn't require you to make giant like if someone crouch techs a lot, of course you just down parry the crouch tech, right?
Right. Or if they wake up with low buttons, or you know, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
something that Nika abuses against me sometimes is that he'll position himself just outside of crouching medium kick range, and then he'll walk up down parry. And if I
Mm.
crouching medium kick, then you know I get parried, and you know it's at a distance where my high is the only choice is like stand fierce, and it's like oh well that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense here to me. Um, so it's like okay well now I have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to you know, deal with this situation. Do I jump? Do I super jump out? Do I neutral jump dive kick? Do I, you know, actually go for that stand fierce since they're down parrying all the damn time?
exactly. So what you just said is like the second step because once you have like the basic kind of uh, once you have the basic thing of like how I'm adapting to like do they like to parry a lot? Do they like to do a move a lot? Then they might have a second move like that, especially with characters like Yun. So now I might need another move that I'm prepared for. If
Right.
I see you jump, like something I work on lately a lot is like a really early DP when I see someone just starting to jump. And to do that is half prediction because I have to move back out of throw range and then I have to buffer DP and be ready to like react with a single press, right? So I'm
Right.
already inputting a DP. And anyway, the reason why like those develop ongoingly,
Hmm.
but to have like the basic stuff like to common moves, like to someone, mash throw on wake up a lot. You guys are talking about Chris G. I remember playing Chris G at Super Arcade like 6 years ago, and this guy just like mashes throw anytime you're close to him. And at the time, I wasn't like that strong at punishing it. And I remember being like, damn, dude, this guy's just teched like 15 throw attempts in like 3 matches.
Right.
So if I was a better player at that time, I would have had super easy answers to that.
Walk
Just
back,
move
crouch,
back,
medium, kick, DP.
yeah, bait him, and yeah. So it's very simple. Like they're usually simple answers, but you have to like be conditioned enough mentally and have it, have the physical response really at your fingertips, ready to go.
Right. So that
Um,
brings up the discussion of, do you actually practice these things? Like, do you intentionally be like, okay, I know that this person does this. I'm gonna practice the walk back DP, or is it only something that you intentionally do when you start to see them do these secondary moves? Like, at what point do you make the transition from making? Because I watched a video that Brian F. talked about this
mhm.
whole thing about, like, first level decisions, second level decisions, third level decisions, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Um, so like when you're at your very basic, those are things that happen automatically, right?
Hmm.
So at what point do you try to make these things that automatically happen?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm super complete at making any of these things happen because now that I'm trying to implement them all the time, it's like you need a lot of practice and time doing them for it to be
Second nature.
second nature and for it to make sense because
Right.
sometimes you do it against the wrong character or
Player.
the wrong player where you didn't really read it right. You didn't upon like in retrospect there would be reasons that they didn't fall for it or whatever.
Right.
um So I practice most of these in match, to be honest. Um, these aren't things that I find without like without randomization in training mode. I don't think like practicing them is
Viable.
viable. The only thing you can do is, for instance, walkbacks. There are different throw ranges, car throw ranges. So it it can be you could spend a few minutes just like figuring that out. You could
Right.
go, well, how far do I have to walk back for this to be like legit in a certain matchup? Like against like Ken is a good one because Ken has a not great car back throw, but it's still longer range than you might think.
Right.
So when you try to bait throw from Ken, you might want to walk back a little further than you think,
Right.
and you spend a few minutes on stuff like that.
But
Just
coming up with the options of, you know, I know that they like to throw here. So now what are my choices to deal with this? Like, that sort of thinking is something that needs to be done before you even attempt to punish the throw. Because, like,
yes,
if you don't have an answer in your head, you know, going going to yourself, I'm gonna walk back to see if he throws. Okay, cool. But if you don't have an answer to that after that, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. But
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
you
You need
know,
to think about this a little bit ahead of time,
right,
depending on your character. Some characters are gonna have a tough time. I'm looking at like a picture I have on my wall with all the characters, and I'm like, if you played Q and you're trying to walk back to beta throw, you would only really have two options. That's like Kara throw or
crouch
just
short.
like super. Yeah, or a single button. So it's different for everyone, but you can get as high tech with it as you want. I think Third Strike's interesting because stuff like instant supers are really powerful.
Right,
A lot of the supers in this game are 1, 2, 3, 4 frames, and that's way faster than almost all like mid-range normals possible. There's almost no mid-range normal that's under like 6 frames.
right,
So you can get really crazy with it if your technique goes hand in hand with all of the stuff we're discussing.
right.
And
Like
if you
it's
find
ridiculous when
yourself,
you watch like Kuroda play. Like, have you ever watched him play Yun?
I have the DVDs, but they're like not the highest quality. I don't know if he played more later.
So the way that he approaches it is he just like when he plays against Shotos or whatever, he just sits at a range where like he'll walk back and forth and make them whiff, crouching medium kick or sweep, and then he'll dash punch. So it's just like
Oh,
uh
that's sick.
a what? But it's like having the ability to react to that. Like I know that when he plays Q, he'll react with like super and all that sort of stuff as like whiff
Mm-hmm.
punishes and neutral. And it's just
Yep.
like, oh well, that's fun.
So if that's something you want to work on, a lot of players are going to be like, well, I'm not that great at doing supers.
Right,
So now you may need to put some time into just grinding out the raw technique of it.
right,
Um, inputs are so precise in Third Strike that there's a whole like aspect of the game where like, you may have like jump out situations where the parries get pretty crazy and yeah, it's just like you could spend a lot of time on that.
right. It's one of those
That's
rabbit
like,
holes that you can just go into forever if you really want to.
yes, yes. So how much time you put into it, it doesn't. It's not to say like putting none in is a good thing. Every bit you put in, I think, in the end, is beneficial. Like no matter what you practice in training mode, it has some bearing on the game. Like parrying supers. Um,
Red parries or, positional
yeah,
parries or like, knowing that Ken can only do stand roundhouse really after short, short, short without like movement. And then you can still
right.
block low after your forward parry. Like finding out stuff like that is all like, you need to explore those things.
Yeah, you sit and you parry like some like carry parry Shippu a few times, and even if you're not that great at it and only get it like 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10, whatever, just the fact that you realize suddenly like, oh, this is like I can do this.
Right. And there's going to come those situations where that Ken's going to try to chip you out with super. And, you red parry the second hit, you parry the third hit, you jump, and then they're like, oh crap.
Exactly.
So, um, like, would you use training mode if you had more tools available? Like, are there any tools in other fighting games that you wish existed for the third strike training modes? Like, if someone were to make one, because you know that LUA thing exists, which sort
Hmm.
of fixes a lot of issues, but it brings up other issues. So, like, if you were
Right.
to make your own, what would you sort of put in there that might not already exist?
All the modern stuff for sure. Just the SF5 has like for even though the game's terrible, has a pretty comprehensive training mode,
Right,
and to have those randomized recordings. Um, I played a lot of Grand Blue earlier this year, and that game had a really cool training mode feature where you could have like an option set where on recovery they would automatically do something, and the
right,
options for that are throw, DP, super, stuff like that, jump, and
Right.
it lets you really like quickly figure out stuff like, oh, if I jab someone and then they jump on the first available, frame that they're recovered, what can I do there? Where's my window for punishing that?
Right.
And those sort
Luckily,
of
that
features,
stuff actually exists for that LUA training mode. But
really,
if
I
you're
gotta check that out.
on Windows 10, it's kind of not great. But
Okay.
you
My
know,
problem is I'm on a MacBook, so
oh well, just use wine, I guess.
yeah. But yeah, those things are like really something that Third Strike has a hard an aspect of it that is really tough in that some things are very hard to practice outside of the game just because of
Yes,
the lack of those things.
absolutely.
And some players who are really tech savvy, it hurts them because they could probably be way better players. Like guard jump is a great one. There's no amazing way to practice guard jump that I know of without like I mean, I've seen Yuki set up uh, his guard jump like scenario in training mode, and it basically just requires you to record something where you know the exact timing already of like how to deal with that.
Right.
And
So I actually, in the video that I talk about for Gruffalon's training mode,
mhm,
one of the main things that I go over is how to practice guard jump with that using randomization. So
nice,
you might want to take a look at that, and
I will
that'll help you with that.
absolutely.
So is there anything you want to plug before we head out for the night?
Not really. I mean, anyone who wants to see some SoCal players can check out the Boiler YouTube channel. I think it's all right. That's cool on YouTube.
They also have a YouTube, yeah, a YouTube, and they have Twitch that used to be run by Kazi, right?
Yeah, I think they're gonna start streaming again soon.
That would be really cool.
Um, Not much else. I mean, I'm waiting for Jazzy to come back.
All right.
So
Well, hopefully we'll
yeah,
get to see you some events offline soon, pending this corona madness. But if not, hopefully, even if you don't play Ken, you'll make your way online if you get too stir crazy.
it may happen.
But if not, it is what it is. I do appreciate your time and thank you for coming on. And
All right, thanks, man. Yeah.
until next time, have a good night.
All right, later.
See ya.